Hello, my name is Chris Snipes, and you are listening to The Melt. I have in front of me one Joshua Cutchin, and we get the rare opportunity to actually sit across the table from one another and have a discussion in the real 3D environment that we navigate every day, but not usually in this world. Usually in the podcasting world, we're restricted to Zoom and seeing each other through computer monitors or on our phone or something. But now we're sharing the same air here, and it's a great luxury.
Yeah, there's something that's always so great about that sort of find the others kind of mandate, but I think it's only half the story, right? Like you've got to find the others, and then you've got to make space for the others too in your life.
Exactly.
And we're fortunate enough that some of my my best friends are online, but I do try to make time for them whenever I can, and it's an opportunity. I'm just so happy to see your face.
Yes.
It's been great. Yeah.
Yes, likewise. Yeah. It's fantastic. It's good to know. I mean, you see the person on the screen and you go, oh, yeah, I know that's a real person that looks like an abstract vision or visual of somebody, but they exist in the real world out there somewhere. I'm just going to take that for granted.
Yeah.
But it's not like meeting somebody face to face and shaking their hand and looking into their eyes. So
100%. I completely agree. As we said beforehand, meat space is underrated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes. Great to meet you in real time, brother. Okay, let's dive into this. This book, I will admit that I'm not all the way through it yet. My time is so limited, embarrassingly limited, but I got to 130. Which
that's good.
So far, it's amazing.
Well, it's too long, It's
not at all.
Anyway, I completely sympathize, empathize, understand all those things. Not getting any farther through it because I used to write these tiny little books that just looked at like an aspect of the phenomenon, but Ecology of Souls represented such an inflection point, and the conversations that I was having after that. Were so much more expansive than I was. First of all, I freaked out, right? And I wrote a novel, and no one read the novel, right? So, but I got that out of my system.
Good.
And then I was like, okay, well, let's put a bow on this before returning to tidier things. So that's a lot of what Fourth Wall Phantoms was trying to engage with bigger, holistic aspects of the phenomenon before moving on to those niche Fortean topics that I used to engage in with a lot more. Having said that, my next project is gigantic and unwieldy as well. But hopefully after that, I can sort of narrow the focus a little bit and get in and out with something a little bit tidier.
Yeah, just the little bit that I dove into here is already opening so many Pandora's boxes. Like, I love it. I love books like that. And they don't come across within the community that we are loosely finding ourselves in. Those don't come across too often. Often it seems like people like to put their flag in the ground in a particular way of looking at the phenomenon, whether that be UFOs or cryptids or whatever, nuts and bolts, physical, non-physical. I'm an all of the above kind of person.
Right.
And I also like to have my views challenged. And so far it's been very challenging, but in a way that doesn't feel like a rude invasion, like a waking up of the alarm, everything that is wrong, but it just more recontextualizes it.
Invitations, I think that's the biggest thing. And I think that there's so much to be learned from that. I treat the Fortean the same way that I do my spirituality and my politics and my relationships and stuff. I always try to come in good faith with an open hand as opposed to a closed hand, and be like, here's
Yes.
some ideas, here's some options. Help me tear this apart,
Mhm.
or join me in sort of being like, yeah, I think that makes sense too, or something.
Yes.
I think that, like, I think it's kind of a, I don't know. I can't act like I'm a seasoned old man or anything. I did turn 40 this year,
That's enough.
but like, I think that's a pretty good guiding ethos. I've Goldilocks my way to that sort of an ethos in
Mhm.
life, is like, let's just sort of just explore these topics a little bit more. And I
Yeah.
think that, yeah, I think that you're right. There are a lot of people who are wed to certain hypotheses, and I always want to challenge my own too. I'm
Yes.
like, some of the ideas in this book make me uncomfortable
Yeah.
in terms of how unstable reality seems to get.
Yeah.
I literally gave myself GI distress trying to write the chapter on religion because I'm talking about religions as fictions, and
Yes.
but, like, and that not mattering, in
Uh-huh.
some ways. So hopefully the transcendental aspect of that, save my immortal soul come judgment day, we'll find out, I suppose. But yeah,
Yeah, I think I like it being. It's like taking a step back, zooming back, and looking at all of the different things that might call these things into being, and sometimes the boundaries are very blurry, And I like this book deep diving into that. What implored you to go into this particular subject area, the fourth wall, fictional characters coming into our reality?
yeah, a couple things. Uh, one of them is that sort of challenging of my own beliefs, right? Because Ecology of Souls, I was so taken with. I got high on my own supply. I got a little
Oh
bit, I
man,
guess,
yeah.
which is a horrible idea. Even that's the first rule of the street, right? Don't get high on your own supply. But so I always try to not do that. But it was so parsimonious that it was even more irritating that there were these leftover bits.
Yes.
And so that was part of it. Number two is that I love high strangeness like I used to love bourbon, right? Like, the stronger the better, top shelf.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't get more high strange than fictional characters coming into real life.
Exactly.
Number three is to sort of rescue these ideas from the Fortean orphanage, because nobody wants to touch them.
Mhm.
They're too weird for even the weirdos.
Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of them too weird for me in a lot of ways. And so when I see that sort of deficit in my own thinking, it's like, well, that's the time to chase that down.
Mhm.
And, because, as someone very famous once said, if it's real, it can handle the pressure,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And I think that is true. So all these different things, if you sort of look at the trajectory of what I was doing post ecology, it's kind of been trending in this interest in fiction sort of way, because I did write the novel.
Yeah.
Fairy films
Mhm.
was a collection of looking at how fairy folklore informs a lot of our cinema. So, like, I've always had an interest in this, and I was a movie monster kid before I was a Bigfoot kid or a
Mhm.
UFO kid. I was
Yeah.
never really a UFO kid, but so, like, yeah, so it's just sort of like a rekindling, reincorporation. And you know what, Chris? The other thing is, it was time for this book. By which I mean, this is a book of the post-truth era. This is a book that can only come out when we don't trust our institutions,
Mhm.
when we have AI blurring the boundaries between what's real and what's not.
Yes.
When we have to sort of rely on our own coherence to navigate this sort of tricky time. It's trickster time, which is why UFO disclosure is arguably pushing further than it has,
Mhm.
because it's only able to push itself more into the public sphere when there's that deniability that everybody has. It's like, well, I don't know what I don't know what I'm supposed to believe the authorities are telling you now.
Exactly.
Right? Because, like, whoever you didn't vote for in the last election, imagine they're president, and imagine they're telling you that UFOs are real. Do you believe them? No. The answer is no.
Yeah.
And this is a problem that you see around the world. So, like, this is the time when the UFO finally can let its hair down.
Mhm.
And so that's the time when we have the discussion about fiction and fact, and how much of a boundary we should erect between those two.
And through the process of writing this book, how did these ideas of fictional characters coming into reality, or reality, I always feel like I have to put it in quotes.
Right. I know what you mean. Consensus.
Yes,
Consensus reality.
consensus reality. How did your view of that shift? Assuming
Well,
that it did.
no, I mean, so much of Fourth Wall Phantoms is taking this idea of, the famous story, in case, your listeners want to have some idea what we're talking about. Alan Moore seeing John Constantine in a sandwich shop in
Yes.
Westminster. It's the famous example.
Oh.
in reality, here's a very tangible way that my opinion shifted. I always knew that this was a thing, that creatives imbue their creations with more of an autonomy than we appreciate, the rest of us do. But I didn't realize exactly how pervasive it was. I mean, I had some friends who are sort of like, really reductionist atheist types who are fiction authors who have told me like, yeah, your characters will let you do things or not let you do things. I'm like, wait, hold on. What did you say? Like, step back and reevaluate that. But I didn't realize exactly how widespread this phenomenon was. And there are a couple of stats in the book from the University of from the Edinburgh Book Festival. University of Durham did a survey in the different metrics, but to varying degrees, sensed presence, characters having autonomy, all the way up through oral and visual quote unquote hallucinations. This is something that a lot of authors experience. There's also an excellent book that I refer people to at every juncture because it's so informative to fourth wall phantoms. It's Chidambaram Ramesh's Embodied Imaginations, which is just looking at, authors and how often this happens and how often they interact with their characters and how often they've seen their characters and heard their characters. And it's so common. I got a little bit of that with my novel, Them Old Boys Never Died. Just a little bit. I would have answers to questions I'd puzzled over the entire day come to me on the cusp of sleep, which is really annoying because you have to get up and write it down, and now you're awake again. So,
yes, exactly.
But it's a thing that happens, and it's a thing that I can't think of things that are more antithetical to physicalism and materialism than this topic. It makes the UFO and cryptids and the ghosts seem very, very acceptable by comparison.
Yeah.
And so it's just a place to go that not a lot of people had. So that's the way that my opinion of these topics changed. Is that oh no, this isn't something that needs to be thrown in the rubbish bin. It's something that is part of being a creative. Now, of course, that gets even stranger when you have people who are like, a welder in Idaho who see something that looks like a fictional character. Then it's like, well, this person, it's not a tulpa, it's not a thought form because, this is somebody else's that's escaped. So yeah, want to sort of explore that as well, and seeing how often this happens to people who aren't creatives and who will see things like people who will see a UFO and describe it in very specific terms, and that particular shape is revealed later as a hoax. What did they see?
Yeah,
that's an interesting question to be asked. So, this issue of fictional incursions, as I call them, has been talked about in regards to the UFO question, less so, but a little bit in regards to the ghost question. Not really at all in regards to the cryptids, because cryptozoology is, at the end of the day, an imperialist, colonialist, physicalist appeal to these phenomena. They don't want to hear anything about this weird stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I thought it was important to have all those things put in dialogue with each other. And then that really is just an excuse for me to talk about narrative and how that might shape the paranormal as well. And I end up rambling for a while, like I am right now. But
that's what we're all here for, is to hear you ramble. Did you come across any of that when you were writing your fictional book?
So there were those issues of questions sort of resolving themselves. I did have an interesting experience with a pharmacist. There's a character in my book who was a pharmacist, and I had come up with her, and I met someone at my pharmacy that I had never seen before who very closely matched this character's description in my book. And for the longest time, I didn't see her at my pharmacy again. And I was, I didn't want to go up to the counter and be like, "Hey, does this person really work here?" Or a
little creepy.
Turns out she is a real person. I'm not trying to deny her personhood. I've since interacted with her. But it was still an interesting sort of confronting way of the way that must feel for people. So I kind of put that in that context. And it also highlighted a tension that runs throughout Fourth Wall Phantoms, which is at the heart of the matter. Is this something more akin to manifestation, or is it something more akin to retrocausality? In other words, obviously, because this person works at the pharmacy, I'm not going to say that I manifested her, right? But I did have a character like that in my book that I put in before I met this person at the pharmacy. So was I premembering? Was my interaction with her in the future going backward through the past and causing me to put her in the book? And that's sort of an ongoing dialogue throughout Fourth Wall Phantoms, is really sort of that balancing act of Is it manifestation? Is it retrocausality? Which is it? I think it's a mixture of both. Eric Wargo's work on retrocausality is fantastic.
Yes.
Anybody hasn't read it, he's done his homework. If you thought of a contradiction, Eric has an answer for it. And I'm convinced that at least aspects of it are dead on the money. There are some issues and some cases and some times where I think they could use a little bit more fleshing out, but I think that's definitely part of this as well. So
you said something about premembering, and I've never heard of that before. What is Premembering? Is that how you?
Premembering. Yeah, Eric uses those terms, especially in his latest book, From Nowhere. Time Loops was the first one, but it was interesting because I had to sit down with Eric because I'm like, this is going to look kind of contentious. Like, I just want to clear the air because he was a supporter of mine early on, and we'd always been friendly, but I just wanted to be sure that this didn't look like I was just being a jerk about it, and so yeah, he's used that term, and he and I part ways. Like I ascribe a lot more importance to archetypes, I think, than he would, because like the issue that I see in the retrocausality thing is like where the idea originates, right? So it's like the paradox of like, I'm a mathematician and I solved this equation with advice from a mysterious stranger that turned out to be me in the future, traveling backwards through time to give me the answer to this equation. Well, where'd the answer to the damn equation come from, right? And in his latest book, From Nowhere, it's been out in a while, so I can kind of spoil it. He suggests that it's the center of the time loop. It's ex nihilo. And even he says this, but I wanted to flesh it out even more. He says it's ex nihilo, and he's like, yeah, I realize that sounds like Genesis. And I'm like, yeah. And you know what it says in Genesis and a lot of other creation myths. Some Maori myths, some interpretations of Vedic myths. It's word, it's language, it's story. That is the genesis for everything.
Gotcha.
That's how you make something from nothing, is through story. So the idea that situates story in my mind not only does it allow the ideas that I'm playing with to sort of nest into retrocausality, but it also positions story as like a fundamental driving aspect of the universe that is something like gravity almost. It's that fundamental.
So story would be a different way of manifesting something, as opposed to something more internal, like having a recurring thought of maybe something that you fear or something that you really desire, so much so that you sort of draw those things into you. There's something different about writing it all down and putting it out there in that sort of suspended animated form.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if it's writing it all down. I think it's just sort of the way that we organize these narratives in our lives. So at one point in the book, I go rather exhaustively through Vladimir Prop's 31, I believe. I need to go back and look. 31 functions of the wondertale fairy tale. And the reason that Prop gets invited into the discussion is because he's one of the founding forces of narratology. And so if you're going to talk about narratology, first in, best dressed, you've got to talk about Vladimir Prop. And there is an argument to be made that reality resembles these fairy tales because folklore and fairy tales and such are the ways that we, organize our reality. We graft stories onto it. And I understand that and I sympathize with that. We have to sort of construct narratives. But I think there's something to be said that my trip to the grocery store doesn't resemble the hero's journey. It doesn't resemble Prop's functions. My trip here to Kansas today didn't really resemble that either. But my marriage kind of does. Being a parent does. Recovery does. And alien abductions do. These transformative experiences are the ones that map onto that template, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that if extraordinary experiences aren't real, why do they so closely mirror that and map onto that? I think that's a question that needs to be asked. And what I personally landed on, and it's not incredibly well argued or well formulated, but is the idea that we should treat stories, and especially these stories, these big overarching stories, like the same way we would archetypes. Because I don't know about you, Chris, I know people who are archetypes. I know people who will never read Carl Jung.
Yeah. And
they are archetypes. So that to me is enough of, well, number one, that takes retrocausality out of the question, right? Like,
yes.
you're your buddy who is an anti-hero, or I have a friend of mine who's probably like the world's best magician. He doesn't practice magic, but he's like a trickster kind of no, he's the fool, really, is what he is. And I mean that in the loving way, like the wisdom of the fool, right?
Sure.
He's never going to read Carl Jung, you know what I mean? And so that's not retrocausality. He didn't read Jung and then manifest these. So something archetypes, I think, do exist. And if those sort of archetypes of these characters and events like the storm or the flood, these archetypes exist, then why not archetypes arranged in a sequence, these beats that we have? Why wouldn't they also guide and sort of nudge our lives in certain directions? And I think that's what we see with the alien abduction experience. A lot of these different experiences is that they are sort of nesting into that archetype. They're water that is flowing into that dry riverbed, to paraphrase Jung.
But even calling it an alien abduction is still maybe putting too fine of a point on it, right?
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, so this is something that, like, I keep on bringing this up on podcasts because I want people to be on the lookout for it. The alien abduction is changing. We don't really get many of these 70s, 80s, 90s style abductions with the surgical pageantry anymore. It's just not happening. I've talked to people in MUFON. The late Earl Grey, God bless his soul, who just passed away, confirmed that, people aren't really getting that anymore. They're getting consciousness effects. They're getting things that are more explicitly OBEs, out-of-body experiences, and downloads, and those sort of things. And so I think that somebody needs to come along and do like a Kenneth Ring or Eddie Bullard style analysis of these newer topics, these newer modalities, these newer expressions of the alien UFO contact thing. Again, labels are bad.
Yes.
But somebody needs to do an analysis and see, like, well, does this still map on, does this still have the hallmarks of what we've come to learn over the past several decades? Has it changed because we got the message and it's time for phase 2? Has it changed because we weren't getting the message and they're trying a different tactic? I don't know. But it is interesting that I mentioned Vladimir Propp earlier. Even Mircea Eliade had applied some of Vladimir Propp's functions of the wondertale to shamanic initiations. So that was when I was like, okay, this definitely seems to fit. There's this archetype that can be applied to rites of passage, shamanic initiations, and alien abductions. And although I didn't really dig into it, I think near-death experiences would probably fit that category as well. But I don't want to sort of gloss over your initial comment that, like, the language and the labels are problematic, because they are, and they always will be. Yeah.
And there's so many moving parts too. When you have the I think I mentioned something about screen memories. Like like,
well, yeah, and that's I hate the idea of screen memories, because it's like the ufologists just throw up their hands whenever something doesn't make sense, and they say, "Oh, it's a screen memory," and they move on.
Yeah, it's a catch-all.
And it's a little bit better, I think, to say, okay, well, this looks like the fairy's glamour. That's a more sophisticated approach. But I think we also need to wrestle with the possibility that encountering what we call the UFO, whatever that may be, is so weird that it literally warps and rearranges reality in its wake. Because, like, so Chris, I'm so tired of this. In the modern disclosure era, people keep using this term ontological shock. And it's a great phrase. It's John Mack's phrase. I love it. It might have come from someone else, but Mack sort of popularized it in the UFO space. That's a great phrase. Aliens aren't ontological shock. Extraterrestrials are not ontological shock. I have a shelf in my brain, and there's a label on it that says extraterrestrials. And it's just waiting for me to put a UFO up on there, right? There's a space for that. Ontological shock is that, an aspect of my consciousness really was present back in that haunted house that I was in as a child. Ontological shock is the synchronicity that I'm experiencing really did happen, and it really did unfold in this way. Reality and the universe itself rearranged itself because of me contacting this other thing. The thing that I like to say is, which changes your worldview more? Reality looks like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or reality looks like the Iliad? Which changes your day-to-day life more? I know my answer, you know? So I think that that is what ufologists are avoiding when they say screen memories, because they don't want to deal with the implications of reality being that weird.
Well, I think that also screen memory, to me at least, implies that your memory is being screened from somebody external, from something external to you, not like you're supplying it yourself.
Right.
But maybe there's a little bit more of a sort of a collaborative agency to that, because you have whatever it is that you're observing or experiencing, and then you have your perception of it, and then happens in translation, which may be the point where your template gets put over something.
Yeah.
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 So it can make sense to you.
Benign Lovecraft is what I sometimes refer to it. Yeah, this is an idea that's been around for a long time in various different forms. I actually traced what I think might be the earliest version. I mean, there are arguably aspects of it in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and in a bunch of different religions, but like in sort of the Western literary corpus, um, a memoir from a former enslaved person on a plantation, I believe in South Carolina, I mentioned in the book, um, where they would see a ball of light coming across the property at night, and he would say, like, he says in his memoir, like, it would appear different ways to different people. You know, this is one of these sort of buhag is what they would call it, traditions. And that idea that, like, you know, well, there's a light, and then we're bringing some sort of cultural expectations, personal expectations, societal expectations to it. Um, it's popped through like Jenny Randall's and John Keel and lately Greg Bishop, my friend and mentor, has been on that train for a while. So I think that's part of it too. I definitely think it's part of it too. But the thing that frustrates me the most, Chris, is that, like, Kenneth Arnold had his sighting in 1947. Where's the definitive book on screen memories? Like, where's the book that really takes this apart and says, like, this looks like these are all these older traditions that I sort of alluded to. Like, where is that sort of like rigor? And I don't see it anywhere. Instead, we're just happy with saying, like, oh, aliens can make things look like they aren't. And then we don't talk about the mechanisms. We don't talk about whether that's technological or psychic or anything, you know.
Or nobody thinks that. I mean, a few people do bring it up, but maybe things are making things look like aliens. Like, maybe it's not an alien abduction at all. Maybe we have a MILAP going on or something completely different.
Well, that's that's the other thing. It's like, how much of this is, you know, how much of that is terrestrial fuckery?
Yeah.
pardon the phrase,
No.
You know, I mean, like, that's a huge component of this.
For sure.
You know, I think that some recently published news articles indicate that, even in the modern expression of this disclosure moment.
Sure.
And, you know, I don't know if that's, I mean, the mundane and probably accurate reading is that that's these authority structures capitalizing on the pageantry of these experiences. But, you know, part of me wonders if it isn't just them capitalizing on the pageantry. Part of me wonders if it's like, oh, they're doing this, we should do this too. You know, we should harness that same power to sort of occlude and obscure people's memories of these incidents. Yeah. So that's part of the equation too. And I normally don't engage with that sort of skullduggery angle in my work, not because I don't think it's there, because it's so much there. It's just it's such a difficult thing to wrap your arms around, and it requires a type of research that I don't really have that much of an aptitude for, which is like FOIAs and you know, honest to God, archival research. Like, my hat's off to those people. But that's definitely part of this equation as well. Yeah.
So you several times, and maybe it is more developed or thoroughly explained later on in the book that I haven't gotten to yet. Capital T, capital S, the story. What is the story that you keep referring to?
Well, I'm going to answer that by way of talking about the prologue.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I went back and forth a good deal about exactly whether or not to include and how to include the material of the prologue. But long story short, the prologue opens up with spoiler alert, my entry into rehab for alcoholism in 2020, and hopefully it doesn't come off as too navel gazy.
Not at all. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
But it was important to me to put that in my recovery in the context of capital T, capital S story, which for me are these pathways that God, reality, the universe, pick whichever one you like, want us to take. They're sort of the paths of least resistance. I think they can be templates for how to get yourself from point A to point C. Like it tells you where to find point D and how to get out of there.
Sure.
And I included it in the beginning to show that like this thing has stakes, so much of this stuff that we talk about in these spaces is UFO porno, Bigfoot porno,
sure.
ghost porno. And like, don't get me wrong, I have a soft spot for that stuff too, or else I wouldn't be here. But like, when you extrapolate that to the human level, when you really engage with the so what of it all, this thing has stakes. So that was part of it. Part of it was because it seemed very on brand for me to introduce myself into a book about breaking the fourth wall, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But for me, the story, and I think probably different people will have different stories, but I do think that there is something to the hero's journey, and more accurately, something to Vladimir Prop's Functions of the Wonder Tale, because they predate Joseph Campbell's work. But I was sitting there, in a situation that was very challenging. A guy who was a child of privilege, hanging out with heroin addicts and people who'd done time and all this stuff, like real fish out of water.
Yeah, I've been to rehab, so I totally understand. Yeah.
And I don't know. Well, there's the first thing where you're like, these aren't my people, right? That's the first thing. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And then you realize that these totally are your fucking people.
Exactly.
But like, it was like when you're introduced in media res at the beginning of a movie and there's a record scratch, like, hey, this is me. You probably wonder how I got here. It was kind of an opportunity to do that in real time in my life, and to say like, okay, well, this is where I am. This isn't the way my story is supposed to go. This isn't what, again, I would say God, but this isn't what the universe, reality wants from me. And is there a way out of this? Like, where did I stumble? Where did I fall? Did I stumble? Did I fall? Is this part of that story?
Yeah.
And for me, from what little I remembered while I was, in rehab, they let us have our phones, which still sort of boggles my mind. So, but I was in the belly of the whale, but not only that, like, so I sort of applied that and was like, okay, well, this is how you get out of it, and this is the way you go, and this is, these are the next natural steps. That if this is the way that reality tends to function, then I can slip into this current and ride that current to where I need to go. But I'm not saying that that's always. I'm not saying that you have to apply Jung or Prop or anything. Like one of the things that really resonated with me, because I'm a big nerd, is so much work has been done about like talking about like Star Wars as the hero's journey and whatnot. But like, what's interesting to me is in Return of the Jedi, like, Luke doesn't kill Darth Vader. He doesn't kill the Emperor. He tosses away his lightsaber. He's like, I'm powerless. I don't know what you want from me, but I'm not doing it. It's just stopping and just refusing to fight, and acknowledging the power of these dark forces and refusing to fight, and that's what saves his bacon. And that's the recovery story. Like, it really is. And so all these things, I guess what I'm saying is that, like, I think there probably is one V story. It's probably a very streamlined version of Prop or Campbell, which, if you start taking out extraneous bits, you can probably get that down to like 4 moves, right? But I do think it's probably a little bit different for everybody, and it might look more like variations on that story than it does on those sort of original templates. But that's what I would qualify as the story.
Okay, gotcha. There's something that you said that I thought it was a very interesting concept, but that I wanted you to expound on, if you would be so kind. You wrote something, paranormal experiences themselves function as narratives.
Mm. Yeah, well, so over the past 3 years, I guess, ever since he blurbed Ecology of Souls, I've gotten to know Dr. Jeffrey Kripal
Oh,
rather
cool.
well. And, he's been incredibly supportive of my work, and, anyway, a lot of this is influenced by Jeff's work, Mutants and Mystics and Authors of the Impossible, and, he suggests reading, there's a way to read paranormal narratives textually,
Mhm.
but what I like to do sometimes, um, because, Jeff goes at great pains to talk about, like, how literally we should take this stuff. To quote one of his students who I thought put it really well, Eric Davis, we should take these things seriously while not necessarily taking them literally, right?
Mhm.
But what I like to do is the opposite. I like to take them literally. Like, let's dial down and like really focus and take them literally, and then sort of dial back and see if any wisdom is retained from that.
Mhm.
So in this sense, paranormals can be viewed as narratives because um that's where they live, right? They live in stories. Even if you don't share it with anybody, there's a story in your head that
Sure.
conforms to that. And
Yep.
again, that's the whole art versus life kind of thing, which one imitates which. But that's where they thrive. They also thrive in stories from a friend of a friend. And we do have a need to um, wrap them up with a tidy bow a lot of times and to ascribe meaning to them.
Yes.
I don't know if that's an artifact of human interpretation or what, but even if it is an artifact of our interpretation of these events, I don't think that really diminishes perhaps that being
Yeah.
the reason for these events. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I think those are all things that can be sort of inform
Mhm.
that possibility. But I'll be completely frank with you. A lot of the reason that I sort of even engaged with that idea, again, part of it was Jeff's work and whatnot, but a part of that idea was an idea that's central to Fourth Wall Phantoms and really is kind of the excuse for the book existing, which is this idea of metalepsis,
Mm.
which is the breaking of the fourth wall. That's the
Uh-huh.
fancy narratological term for it.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll just go ahead and try to fill everybody in on that because it's a little
Do
bit
it.
it's a
Please
very
do.
highfalutin term. But
Yeah, yeah.
so narratologists will rarely use the term, breaking the fourth wall. The fourth wall is a reference to theater. There's an idea that there are three walls, and then there's an invisible fourth wall between the audience and the people on stage,
Yes.
characters or actors.
Uh-huh.
But fourth wall breaks also happen in other ways. They can be characters interacting with the narrator. It can be top down, where the narrator engages with the characters. I used to love Tex Avery cartoons as
Oh,
a
yeah.
kid, so like those are like metaleptic masterpieces because like a character will ask a question and then they'll climb the question mark. So anything that breaks that idea of anything that breaks that illusion of hierarchies of reality is metalepsis.
Okay.
And that's the term that you will find used. And there are different ways that you can phrase it, but like, there's top down metalepsis, bottom up metalepsis, from narrator to characters, from characters to audience. There was an episode of Black Mirror that was sort of like a choose your own adventure. Actually,
Yes.
choose your own adventure stories
Yep.
are metaleptic, right? Once you see this, you can't unsee it. Every video game is metaleptic, I would argue. There's crossover events. Characters might have, one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles might have a ringtone that's the old school Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme song. That's a metaleptic break.
Okay.
And we could just talk for hours about this concept. It's the subject of a lot of debate, actually, in scholarship amongst narratologists. But what's interesting is you take those collections of essays and whatnot, and you control F metalepsis and you replace it with supernatural and it reads the same. It reads like a book on the paranormal.
Oh, wow.
Metalepsis is metalepsis alerts the players to the fact that reality is not what they assumed it was.
Yes.
It leads to madness.
Uh-huh.
It often embodies humor and tricksterishness. All these different things. It also once a character accepts metalepsis, they can sort of, in Jeff Kripal's words, I would argue, sort of become authors of their own reality. And they can sort of manipulate and they can interact with this thing and they can sort of game the system, right? That's what the end result of every metalepsis is really gaming the system of reality. And I don't think that there is a more potent metaphor for becoming aware of the paranormal than this metaleptic idea. In fact, I would argue that it's probably what's going on with that idea that John Keel talked about. The reflective factor is what he used to call it. Nowadays, you'll hear people say, oh, you look at the paranormal, you look at the phenomenon, and the phenomenon looks back. That's what they'll say.
Yes.
Your mileage, I don't know, maybe your mileage probably varies in regards to that old chestnut. Mine certainly has.
Sure.
But I think that the idea stands is that, like, you're acknowledging the fact that reality isn't what you think it is, and then that changes you, right? And when I was really like, okay, this idea has teeth. Well, number one, a couple of different things. I'm just rambling because I'm so excited about it. Metalepsis is the domain of the trickster. Full stop. And if anybody can't see that, like, I don't know what to tell you. Tricksters are inveterate violators of boundaries. That's what metalepsis is. Deadpool is a trickster.
That's exactly what I was about ready to raise my hand. Like, have you seen? That's multi-layered, multi-leveled metalepsis.
100%. Yeah. And then, people sometimes refer to fourth wall breaks as being meta. That's what this is a refer to.
Gotcha.
As a reference to. But tricksters are. It's no coincidence. It seems it would be highly coincidental to me for tricksters to be the patron saint of metalepsis, and also, I believe, and many have suspected, the governing archetype of the paranormal. That seems too tidy to me, right?
Sure.
And again, this is all about, like, realizing other realities, realizing realities above yours, realizing realities adjacent to yours. This is all paranormal ideas. But the moment that I really said, okay, I can stop beating up on myself, this idea has teeth, is I found a bit of scholarship by a scholar named by the name of Grefflein, who was talking about Greco-Roman vases. It sounds like, I'd never say vase in real life, but, like, when you're talking about, Greek vases.
That's what it is.
Yeah, Greek vases.
Yes.
And if you picture those, the characters on the vases are almost always in profile.
Yes.
The most common exceptions to the character being in profile are, so these are characters that are looking at the viewer of the vase, as opposed to in profile. The most common exceptions are sleepers, the dead, symposiusts, so people who are symposium used to be a drinking party. So altered states of consciousness. So sleepers, the dead, people in altered states of consciousness, monsters, and deities. I'm like, those are the boundary breakers of the paranormal.
Interesting.
Those are the people who are looking beyond this reality, the people and the things that can interact over this barrier.
Interesting.
Even gets even more weirdly specific, because panthers are another one of those. And it's like, well, you've got anomalous, this alien black cat reports. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So that was when I was like, okay, this seems like our ancestors in the West understood this concept to some elegant degree. And again, I realize it is a very Western outlook. The epilogue of the book sort of looks at some indigenous perspectives that, if I'd included from the beginning, the book would have been like a chapter long. They're so parsimonious. So I deliberately saved those till the end because I wanted to sort of isolate them and give them the respect that they deserve.
Yes.
But I do think that this is an idea that a lot of our forebears had a very solid grasp of. And it's something that we've lost over time. But in the end, I really do suspect that this sort of idea of fiction reality, that false dichotomy, I do think it's false at this point, is a product of modernity and the West and materialism. And I think that fiction fact dichotomy that we perceive is the same thing as the external-internal dichotomy. It's the physical-mental dichotomy. It's the psychic-physical dichotomy. And to that extent, like, I get so tired of people saying, well, Bigfoot can't be a spirit because it leaves footprints and leaves behind hair. And I'm like, okay, look, again, I'll never say that Bigfoot isn't an ape, because, again, my inner 12-year-old wants it to be an ape, right?
Yes.
But ghosts leave footprints in talcum powder. It's one of the earliest ways that parapsychologists used to research hauntings. So why couldn't something like Bigfoot leave behind footprints and maybe even hair? And to that extent, like, I think that what we're seeing is we're sort of erecting these barriers between internal, external, psychic, physical, fact, fiction.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I would suggest that the UFO is a great embodiment of that, because we are predominantly physical with an important component of ourselves that's psychic. I think that the UFO is predominantly psychic with an important component that's physical.
Gotcha.
And just like us, it sort of straddles this line sometimes and falls more into one camp than the other. I wonder if that's not what's happening.
Yeah, boy, that's a lot to chew on.
I know. So I'm just
Don't be, no,
10 minutes later.
no,
I'm just talking at you. I'm sorry, Chris.
No, God, please do not. It's a highly fascinating stuff. What role does storytelling play in all of this? Is there something that is more apt to bring perhaps a fictional incursion into being by repeating something over and over again, like an oral tradition, an oral story, or
You know, I totally believe that. I mean, if you look at the repetition of these motifs just reinforces our expectations, right? I mean, the best example of that is the fairy folk, right? And because you look back at the way someone would have conceptualized them 400 years ago, 500 years ago, well, maybe 6. They might have been short, but they just as often wouldn't have been short. They wouldn't have had wings, you know. But yet people today will have fairy sightings of little tiny effeminate pixies with wings, you know.
and they're usually dressed in older style clothes.
Yeah, which always raises the interesting question to me is like, they're always sort of dressed in like medieval peasantry clothes.
Yeah.
Did medieval peasants see them dressed in like, to them, contemporary clothes?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Were they dressed in, you know, animal skins? You know?
Exactly. They always refer back.
But yeah, so and there's this constant, like, there is, much as it's another loop, right? It's not a retrocausal loop. It's an Ouroboros between culture and the phenomenon.
Yeah.
And these things are feeding off each other. Because one of my favorite scholars, and I'll champion him every time I get the chance, is Martin Kottmeyer. Not a lot of people know his name, but he's one of the most important figures in ufology to me. This idea of the phenomenon picking up bits and pieces of our culture and incorporating them into its presentation has been talked about Bertrand Mayust, but here stateside, it was Martin, and Martin and Mayust actually set up a little bit of a correspondence. But Kottmeyer has proven that a lot of these things that we accept about UFOs are precedented in the pulps. Like the first instance of an engine stopping can be pinpointed at these pulp magazines and these sci-fi magazines.
Interesting.
Now, yes, interesting. And I agree. And its literal manifestation, that is what we see. But is that not just a variation on a ghost blowing out a candle?
Yeah, exactly.
It's technology that the other is interfering with.
For sure.
And I'm sure that Martin, if he were sitting here, would say, okay, yeah, but even that idea is a trope from this fiction, is a trope from that, is a trope from the Bible, is a trope from these folk legends, is a trope from this. That I think you end up leapfrogging and again and again and again until you wind up at petroglyphs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And like at that point, the time depth is so staggering. Is this lived experience? Is this art? Do those words even apply back then to the way that we were and the way that we interacted with the world? I don't think they do.
No, I don't think so.
So I think that you can make this case for everything. And I don't want that to be the case. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the film, but I don't want modern day Bigfoot sightings to be reiterations of the sci-fi action film classic Predator. Like, I want it to be something objectively weirder, but this is what you see. People today, like, you talk to some Bigfooters and they'll say, oh yeah, these things can see in infrared, and they take people's skulls out, they take people's spines out for trophies, and they're capable of cloaking. When they cloak, they look just like Predator. You can just go through this list of how the Bigfoot phenomenon seems to, much in the same way that the UFOs cannibalize the pulps, modern Bigfoot encounters seem to have cannibalized Predator of all things.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, and these things can just be sort of in the ether too. It doesn't necessarily, just because somebody sees a spacecraft that looks a particular way, doesn't necessarily mean, if I'm getting this correct, it wouldn't necessarily have to reference something that they read out of a pulp, but something that's in the collective unconscious. Right.
Yeah. And that's where archetypes come into the discussion, is because we tap into these things whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And which is why, I feel like I deviated, is because I went against those sort of natural ruts that we should find ourselves in. But yeah, and it also doesn't mean that there's necessarily even a there, right? Which I'm not saying that UFOs are figments of your imagination, but they
Sure.
might be a part of you.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
thing with cryptids, same thing with ghosts. Like
Yeah,
they might
for
be a
sure.
part of you, which I used to hate that idea.
Uh-huh.
And I still kind of hate that idea because again, my inner 12-year-old
Yes.
wants there to be ghosts or dead people and aliens are extraterrestrials and Bigfoot's a big monkey. But but honestly, like there's so much of this that we're playing a role in.
Yeah.
That if a Bigfoot walks through the forest and there's no one to see it, does it happen? Does it make a stop? Yeah.
Just the trail cam see it.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, what would the difference in this case? What would the difference between a tulpa and a fictional incursion be? Is a tulpa something that's more intentionally drawn into being, whereas a fictional incursion might be something that's just
right? So that's the biggest stumbling block when I talk to people about this book, because they're like, oh, so it's all thought forms, or oh, it's all tulpas. I'm like, a little bit too tidy for me. Number one, I think people seriously fail to grasp how much. I have this joke that I had with a friend of mine, that like the modern paranormal scene is just all theosophy and James Shelby Downard. It's all, and like those two things. So much of our modern day conceptions about the paranormal can be traced back to those two things.
That's funny.
And tulpas are really no exception. Alexander David Neal claimed that she manifested this monk through intense focus. And that it got out of her control. It became sort of impish, and she had to, again, apply intense focus to dissipate it. Some sort of mystical secret from the Far East sort of thing. And it just, there are some ideas that look kind of like that in Buddhism from what I understand, but I don't think it's that clearly defined. I think it might be kind of her idea of being attached to some of these older ideas. I wish I had a source. I wish I could remember who told me this, but I had a friend who told me that they had a friend who got a private meeting with a high-placed lama. It might have been the Dalai Lama himself. And they were really excited to ask him about tulpas. And they go in there like, I've learned about this idea of thought forms and tulpas and intense concentrated thought. And I was wondering if you'd give me any other information, any sort of resources, any sort of direction on where I can learn more about this. Do I need to learn Nepalese, or how do I find out more about this? And the Lama goes, huh? So I'm not, and again, that's apocryphal. And there's probably somebody listening right now who's like, no, there is this text that says this. I'm not saying that isn't the case. I'm just saying that I think we've overemphasized it a little bit.
Sure.
And it's kind of like another one of those screen memory things, right? It's like, oh, tulpa, thought form. Okay, let's dust our hands off and go along our way.
Exactly.
But like, something about that doesn't fit for me, because why don't we see, there are people who dedicate their lives to, since we've been talking about it, Star Wars. Why don't we see, why didn't Luke Skywalker deliver my pizza tonight?
Yeah, exactly.
If all there is that's needed is just thought and obsession, like we should be seeing that. We should be seeing Harry Potter fly outside our window. So like, it has never sat with me as a full explanation of these things. So like what I tend to hew more towards is that, and this is sort of a rejection of the anthropocentric idea that I mentioned before, that we're playing a part in this. I think that these things were always out there. I think these ideas are always out there. I think that it's finite in terms of the sense that these ideas are already out there, but infinite in the sense that there are endless iterations and variations on them. Which is just a highfalutin way of saying this quote that has been attributed to Jung, attributed to James Hillman as well, but that people don't have ideas have people.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been seized by an idea like that, yeah, it definitely feels that way. In any sort of artistic endeavor, it's like, oh, this was not me. That's the same case that Eric makes in his work. And in his model, like, yeah, the idea didn't come from you because it came from the time when it was already produced. It came backwards to you, but like this, it's existing in this sort of block universe state of every win, right? And I do think that's the case. There are some examples in the book. Ramesh talks about these some. Eric talks about them some. Of ideas that sort of like went looking for people, and when they didn't get written out, they sort of find somebody else. Mark Twain has an experience of this.
Oh, wow.
With a correspondent. There's another set of authors, and I can't remember their names, forgive me, but they both have the same idea at the same time, and so both sort of like wrote the idea down. And it's very akin to have you ever heard of steam engine time?
No.
So there's this, it's actually taken off in like sci-fi short story writing, where everybody will come up with this great idea for a short story at the same time, and they'll all publish it at the same time, but they obviously didn't plagiarize each other because they were, and this is a variation on Charles Fort's idea that, like, the Romans could have built a locomotive. Like, they had all the scientific knowledge about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Every tea kettle that they had blasted the secret of steam locomotion to them, but they didn't, because it wasn't steam engine time.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And so like, I think this also maybe perhaps explains the phenomenon of twin films that you see from time to time as well. Sometimes it's corporate espionage, but sometimes it's just out there in the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
You get these people who come up with these different ideas at the same time.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're all connected in there's Indra's net sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember when I was blazing through the occult metaphysical section of my middle school library, where I volunteered purposely an hour a day, and it was posited in, I don't remember what any of these books were, titles or authors or anything, that a lot of poltergeist activity is usually often centered around a young adolescent girl, and that it was suspected that they were possibly manifesting it. And that always kind of let me down, because I was like, I like the idea of it just being some really pissed off
ghost or something
that can physically move things. But I mean, perhaps that's the case. Like, I mean, who knows how many different, whatever you want to call it, dimensions, levels of creation that we work on, where some aspect of us might be separate enough or disengaged enough to be able to present something to us that we're not onto. Like, it seems like it's coming from somewhere else.
Well, I mean, this is why I like, so if nothing else, I'm glad that I wrote Fourth Wall Phantoms, just to push me to finally engage with some philosophical ideas that I've been avoiding engaging with. Like, I've been really shy about engaging with idealism, or, dual aspect monism is one that Jeffrey Krappel introduced me to. And I think what a way that will satisfy your inner 12-year-old and my inner 12-year-old of looking at this is that these distinctions just don't matter.
Yeah.
And this is what we hear from the aliens all the time. Swedenborg would say, don't believe them, but take take it with a grain of salt. I am one with the one that is all, is the me within thee. We're all connected. We all return to source. So, like, there is no Chris, and I'm not even trying to get like new age bookshop on you. I'm just saying, like, there is no Chris, there is no Josh, there is no humanity, there is no anything. It's all the same thing. So, like, why are we splitting hairs about whether or not the poltergeist comes from somebody or not? It's just part of this sea. It's another wave on this giant ocean that we're all a part of, right?
Yeah.
And so in that sense, like, if nothing is distinct and separate, then everything is distinct and separate. One of my favorite quotes from Jeff, I don't even think he knew he was being so insightful at the time, but he was sitting down in an interview and somebody asked him his feelings on religion. He said, I believe everything, which means I believe nothing, That's sort of a very nice little Zen phrase. And it's kind of that idea. It's like, so, like, yeah, there is a Bigfoot that, for all intents and purposes, appears exterior for me when I see it in the woods, but it's not. And, I'm not even me, it's all just like part of this. My friend Kevin Can would describe it like as part of this, giant movie that we're all in.
Sure.
So, I think that that's sort of a way to compromise with where the data is leading us and where what we want it to be.
Sure. No, I buy that totally. I think it's because we live in such a materialist, reductionist framework that it becomes a concern if something like that is coming from external or internal. Like, if it was something that was on the menu,
we need funding to scramble the fighter jets and send it up there after it. And
exactly.
And you can't. once that genie's out of the bottle, nobody wants to go work in the call center,
Yes.
and I think that's a big part of it too.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think that, don't get me wrong, like, I ordered a pizza that came here through my phone, and that phone is a product of scientific research, and materialism and physicalism have a big part to play in that pizza that I'm going to dive into. So I'm not trying to like belittle those advancements, but I do think it's robbed us of, it's given us. I think materialism and physicalism have given us a lot of things, but I think they've also sort of stripped away a lot of meaning.
Oh, yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think that
for sure.
we intensely underestimate the importance of meaning in everything, in day-to-day life, in successful, healthy relationships, and crime statistics. Like, meaning is a huge driver and shaping force in this world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that if you're so stuck in materialism too, that's what gives you the false impression that everything is separate, that there are compartmentalized ways of categorizing everything when that's total bullshit.
Yeah, and which brings us kind of full circle back around to like this language problem, and this is something that Saint Terry talked about, is that
Saint Terry.
we're enmeshed in this phantasmagoria of this is horrific. These shapes and these things on your face that you're looking at me through, and these vessels that we're drinking water out of. I mean, it's, and his contention was that if we spent as much time in the psychedelic space or the DMT space, that we would sort of emerge with as much of a linguistic toolkit as we have to describe this reality, which is the only way that we make sense of it, because it is a blurring, buzzing confusion, as he sometimes referred to it, of words. And that also comes around to one of my, I had like 3 theses in the book, 3 or 4 theses, because I just don't know when to quit. But I think that the artistic space is the supernatural space, because what do you hear from people who have these experiences? I don't care if it's a near-death experience, or they're seeing the colors on a UFO, or they're going into trance, or they're hearing fairy music, or any words can't describe it. It defies language. There are no words for this. And that's what art does, right?
For sure.
It could take something. It takes something from that space, and like the analogy I use is Prometheus with a paintbrush, right?
Yeah.
It takes something from that space and like encodes it here in our reality. And people will say, well, books have words, but I mean, the best books are the ones that like say things without saying them. And there are things that are conveyed and emotions that are conveyed that you can't. That the words are a tool to convey things that words cannot convey. If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
That sounds
totally.
that sounds like bullshit. I just said it out loud.
That's
But like,
and that's saying that is an example of what you're saying.
right?
Like,
Yeah. Sort of a little nested metaleptic hierarchy there. But yeah. So I think that might be why we get people who come back from these experiences as artists and with increased artistic aptitude. Is because they've been to that same space that artists just sort of like fall into whenever they want to. And look, I'm not saying my doodles on the airplane ride are from that space. I think that there's good art and there's bad. I think we're all capable of incredible art, every person. But I don't think we all do that regularly. I think that's a very special thing when that does.
I think art is ideally an arena where we don't, well, I mean, you certainly can if you want to, tend to constrain what comes out of it in a particular way. I think there are artists who self-limit and have sort of a formula about things that they create, maybe like a band that, they've have a certain sound, so they don't vary from that too much. But ideally, you could go anywhere with it. Like, I just recently wrote a screenplay to get into a screenwriting school.
That's right. I forgot that you told me about this.
Yeah, that I got accepted into.
Oh, that's fantastic!
Yes.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
Awesome.
But that was a new experience for me. Like, I write intros for the show and this tiny little essays every once in a while and stuff like that, but never a whole story.
So can I flip the script on you? Have you had some of these sort of moments, or some of these things where like you're like, I don't know where that idea came from, but that's powerful,
Yeah, absolutely. It's not so much, I found out that, some people sit down with the pen and paper and that's how they sort of draw them, like they do their cartography that way. That's the way they get through their, okay, that's the way they work through their ideas. I don't know what I'm trying to say. But I found that I would get a seed for an idea, but then I would start recording and then I would just rant about it. And then things often would come in that rant that I don't think that I ever could have gotten to by just sitting down formally with a pen and paper. And yeah, there was something about speaking it.
My one of my favorite catchphrases is that I do my best writing between, how appropriate since the fridge just came on. I do my best writing between the desk and the fridge.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
By which I mean, like, not like I mean, I am a fatty, but like not a fatty, like I'm going to the fridge every time. But like when I'm preoccupied, when I'm just going over something that I can't fix, and I slip out of that for a moment to use a different part of my brain to go do something more object oriented.
Yeah.
Something about that moment kindles, and everything, these automatic processes take over. It's Stephen King called it the boys in the basement, laboring underneath our feet, like they're doing the blue collar imaginal work.
Yeah, yeah.
And I really do. It's an uncanny thing if you have. It's an uncanny thing to experience, but if you haven't experienced, I don't know how to tell people how that happens, but it does.
Yeah,
like these
for
things
sure.
will just like pop into you.
And so during that process, I had to keep reminding myself that I could pull anything into this world. Like the only limitation is what I apply to it. And I found that incredibly liberating. And I wrote the story that way. Like it's not constricted by any kind of convention whatsoever. And there's a lot of stuff that I throw in there that makes sense to me. And hopefully, I mean, I guess it doesn't have to necessarily make sense to other people, but maybe at least get them thinking about the different layers of reality that aren't typically in storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think sense making is overrated. Did you ever see?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I mean, like, that's why David Lynch works, right?
Exactly.
And it's this is heresy. I'm sorry. I appreciate his work more than it resonates with me, right? But there was an HBO series that was very short-lived called Raised by Wolves. Did you see this?
It seems like I've
On
heard of it.
paper, and of course they didn't have a chance to finish the series, so maybe it would have all been tidy. But on paper, like none of it really makes sense. But like I watch it, and I'm like, these archetypes are popping into my head, and I'm seeing these relationships. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't tell you I understand it on an intellectual level, but like from like a felt level, it makes absolute sense. And I think that's something that Lynch did really well for the people with whom it resonated. And again, I know that's heresy. but,
No.
but
No.
but yeah, so I think that's just very, and that's really, well, another topic. Like I think that's what thoughtful surrealist art does. Is that it can sort of, well, it's that it reaches that place that language is bad at describing.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, the screenwriting school, it's in the Maharishi University, but it's the David Lynch screenwriting school.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. That is awesome.
So whenever I would hear Hunter last semester when she was going like, and then her teacher would say something like, well, that doesn't really make any sense. It's like, this is the fucking David Lynch School of Screenwriting.
Right.
Are you kidding me now? Like, why does he get a pass and everybody else has to make sense, but David doesn't have to?
But he was a big proponent of these sort of concepts that we're talking about too, right? He would talk about like going fishing for ideas and ideas
for sure. TM, he practices TM.
Yeah, and P.L. Travers, author of Mary Poppins.
Oh, yeah.
Said that these ideas would come to her, they would float to her like little balloon ideas, and Whitley Strieber has talked about P.L. Travers being a mentor of his. So that was kind of interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so difficult sometimes to talk about this because, as people who are involved in creative capacities, it almost might sound like we're kind of gatekeeping. We're like, oh, we're tapped into the secret knowledge that you're not. But again, I think everybody can tap into it. I think that relationships are an art. I think that being charismatic is its own sort of art. Like I have a very expansive definition of what this art is, and I think that, again, I think that everybody's capable of Everybody's capable of being a vector for it. Let's put it that way. I think that's
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think though, if anything, what these ideas open up is how much agency we have in this reality, like whether it be us actually creating all of this phenomena, or just manifesting simple everyday thing like this new certain kind of car that you've been looking for, and the next thing you know, there's an ad and you
Yep,
see it.
yep.
I think it's important to unpack that because I think that's something that's very underrealized especially because we're in a materialist reductionist framework. Like that's not even on the menu to be able to think that you can manipulate reality just by intending something or fishing for an idea.
Yeah, and I partially blame the reductionists, and I also blame um, some people in the new age who like seized on the lowest resolution version of this idea and ran with it. You know
Of
what I mean?
manifestation, you mean?
Yeah, well, just like this idea that we have that much influence over our lives, because I think we do, but I don't think it's like I think the way you hear it described sometimes is like you just want it and it happens, and that's
Yeah.
not. It's a little bit more complex than that.
For
And
sure.
it has to be. It will happen if the universe so deems it to be the case. But at the same time, like it's amazing to me how much I got into an argument with my wife about this. It's amazing to me how much we've been led down the garden path of like, no, manifestation isn't real. Are you kidding me? Like everything in this room that we're in is started as an idea in someone's head,
Yeah.
I even started like a pen. I'm like, see this pen? So this pen was an idea in someone's head. And she's like, yeah, but it's a pen. I'm like, no, you don't get it.
Civilization.
That's why we work together, is because she keeps my feet on the ground. But
yes.
but yeah, I mean, and the fact that like that book, like, there's a good chance that didn't exist. Like I didn't have to write,
Yeah.
I didn't have to write that, but it's there and it's physical now, and it's doing this weird like atemporal telepathic thing between my brain and your brain. It's crazy when you stop and think about it.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, thank goodness for this thing that we can all point to, and it looks the same to all of us.
Yeah, it's also a good doorstop.
Because of the girth of it.
Yes,
Oh,
yeah.
no, fuck no. I like things that are thoroughly examined. I don't think things like people who have podcasts that are like 30 minutes long.
That is true. It's like, why am I even going to bother listening to this? And by the time I get into it, it's going to be over. Yeah, I understand that.
Anything worthwhile is worth really getting into and digging into and unpacking. And please don't stop yourself.
I feel like I have to apologize every time somebody talks about reading it. I'm like, I'm sorry I robbed you of so many hours of your life.
God, no.
Okay.
I do. Unfortunately and sadly enough, I have more time to listen to books than I do to read books. So I lament that there is no audiobook version of it. But
yeah. I mean, maybe I can sort of speak to this and clear the air on it a little bit, because that's the biggest thing that I get asked about. And, my first 3 books, I have broached the topic of having them made in audiobooks, and I've been told that that's not going to happen from the publisher. I have a great relationship with the publisher, great guy, but he's not interested in it.
Interesting.
So that's facet number 1. Facet number 2 is all this sort of like post 2020 output, footprints, ecology, this. I want audiobooks of this as much as anybody else, but I'm currently working on an audiobook of my novel. Micah Hanks is reading it.
Oh, nice.
So Micah's a perfect fit for it.
Cool.
But I don't necessarily think people understand, unless I do it myself, which I don't have the patience or the equipment or the time for. With something like Ecology of Souls, you're probably looking at, honestly, 5 figures to get somebody to record that.
Oh,
wow. And so that's an aspect of it too. And then like it's going to go this way eventually, right? I could go the AI read voice route.
Oh, please don't.
I don't want to either, but like at the same time, like, people are like, well, what? And like, so I'm just trying to lay it out. Like, this is why I haven't done audiobooks of my other books.
I understand.
And then the third thing is like, I'm sorry if that was really loud. I just scratched my shoulder. The third or fourth thing, wherever we're at, is like some of these words in these books I don't know how to pronounce.
Yeah, that's it.
So it's like, it's this older Greek word or this word in Sanskrit, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be it. So it's a couple of different things. I still want to do it, and I probably will at some point, but it's just trying to figure out the best way to do it that is ethical and cost efficient and all those things.
Well, let's just say hypothetically that you said you would want to read your book and you did have the equipment at home. Do you have the rights to do something like that? Like, could you do it if you wanted to?
That's why I sort of opened up with my first 3 books, Trojan Feast, Brimstone Deceit, and Thieves in the Night, from what I understand, like, that would have to go through a novelist. And again, you know, I have a great relationship with Patrick Weege and nothing but good things to say about him, but I just don't think he's really interested in doing that. The other ones, yeah, I mean, whatever. They're all self-published in that regard.
Gotcha.
And, you know, I think of these different titles, you're probably more likely to see an audiobook of Where the Footprints End with me and Tim first. But
Cool.
it's just all those different factors sort of make me not even want to try.
Yeah,
So
understandable.
someday I totally get it, because like I so many people I talk to say that same thing, and I understand it too, because nothing will make you read less than writing books. Unfortunately, because you spend so much time looking at words.
Exactly.
You probably felt this too with, you know, writing your screenplay.
For sure.
You know, and I'm reading books to write the book. It's like by the time you get done with that, like I know I want to watch a movie or something.
Exactly.
You know?
Something completely mindless. Yeah, I would. Jason Horsley, who I've had on the show several times, he's has several books out, and I would handle a book every show. And I would be like, he would have a new one come out. I was like, do you have an audiobook version of this? It would be very, very helpful for me. And he's like, yeah, sure. I'll send you the files. And it's just him in his kitchen, like reading. It's not like professionally done. It's like, did you hear the fart? Like, no, I didn't catch the fart. Did you hear me, cat? Yeah, I definitely heard your cat. But
that's amazing.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, if there were going to be audiobook versions of this, I would definitely prefer you to read them.
Let's all keep our collective. Let's manifest that.
Exactly.
Let's all keep our collective fingers crossed.
Okay, I'm sure the subject of egregores has come up too.
Yeah.
How do you think that concept fits in all of this?
I mean, this is sort of my definition. So yeah, egregores are they're kind of like thought forms and tulpas in the sense that they're more like a collective accreted belief.
Yeah.
And again, I feel those a lot more, especially because, like, you know, there are sinister political movements that are more like egregores.
Yes.
You know, something that you know, Mark Stavish has talked about and other people have talked about. But for me, in my terms, or at least in my own headcanon, the way that I would sort of quantify them is they're the creation of a new archetype in a lot of ways. I think, you know, a small archetype. Jung alluded to the possibility that archetypes were arranged hierarchically. You know, when he was engaging with the work of Agrippa and all these different correspondences, he said, yeah, there probably is something that are, you know, you could sort of arrange these archetypes hierarchically. So, like, you know, while the United States of America is too specific, in my opinion, to be an original sort of archetype, I think that maybe egregores might be thought of as like a carving out of a new archetype over time. Similarly, you know, the flying saucer, I'm not even sure if it's an archetype yet. It has a lot of archetypal trappings, right? It's got the mandala, it's got the psychopomp's boat to the other world. But I'm not sure if the flying saucer itself is an archetype yet. I'm not sure if you can carve out a new archetype over 70 years. It probably isn't an egregore by that definition. But so maybe egregores are baby archetypes. I don't know.
Archetypelings.
But yeah, that definitely pulls into this, especially when you start pulling on those religious threads, because, you know, there's an argument to be made that that religions are in some ways nothing more than sort of a collection of egregores that people have agreed on. And there's some scholars of religion who would call these paracosms, these sort of shared realities that people generate. But again, I defer to Dr. Kreipel's version of what he thinks religions are, or what he's suggested religions are, which are art that don't know that they're art. And I love that. And like, people might get offended by that, but like, I think that anybody who does get offended by that doesn't necessarily understand what Jeff's trying to, how highly Jeff holds art, you know what I mean? And the transformative qualities of art and all these things.
Do you think that there's a possibility? I mean, there's absolutely no way to prove this or whatever, but might these fictional characters be real beings inserting themselves into authors' minds, using them as sort of a portal into?
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible. I mean, it sort of reminds me of one of my favorite personal explanations for the lights in the sky variety of UFO manifestations is that they aren't physical craft at all. They're disembodied souls, or rather they're what we see when someone astral travels or remote views from another planet, right? So they are extraterrestrial in that sense, but they're what that looks like from a third party's perspective, and they're projecting their consciousness across time to sort of come and visit us in these balls of light.
Crazy.
And so this is kind of like an even more insidious version of that, right? Is it like and honestly, like I don't know if you change the world with religions like the Aetherius Society or some, UFO religions. I don't know if you change the world through that more than you would change it through the seeding of through Twin Peaks, right? Like which changes the world more, right?
Yeah.
A UFO religion or something like Twin Peaks or something that seems genuinely channeled from somewhere else. This is certainly allows a toehold for the synchromystics to enter the chat.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Cue Chris Knowles.
Yep.
Yeah, because I thought that was interesting to think that artists, authors, whatever, in various different forms, could be maybe used sounds not consensual, but I'll just use that term for now. Used as sort of a vortex to manifest something from maybe the intangible world or plane to the tangible world.
They're dance partners, right?
Dance partners, yes.
Yeah. These other forces can't dance alone, but when you get two of them together and they tango.
Exactly. Yeah, you always hear that some spirits like to walk in or inhabit physical bodies, or get them to tell them about physical experiences, like
kind of like hungry ghosts, kind of.
Yeah. Like eat this food because I miss it, and I'm gonna inhabit your body while you, because I can't do it anymore. Yeah. I just think that's interesting.
No, I think that's it probably plays a part in all this. I think you're right. Yeah,
everything I think plays a part in all of this.
Yeah, that's the thing that you get. Well, that's the thing that you sort of start to wonder is like, is not only everything true, but are certain things only true for certain people? By which I mean, like, George Adamski did see Orthon and did interact with Venusians from Venus, but they were just his. They were only his. Like, you wouldn't have had that same experience.
Yeah.
And it is this sort of like, not quite solipsistic. I'm sure that there's some sort of philosophical word for it, but like it does sort of like end up suggesting that we're all in our little fiefdoms. I mean, like honestly, that's sometimes it's the only way that I can explain some of the differences that we have in our perception of the world today, is that people literally inhabit different realities.
For sure.
Which kind of is reassuring because it allows us all to be more charitable with each other. Like things are literally true for them and they are not. But like, but that was one of the most unsettling things about this book, is because like that's where if you keep following this rabbit down that hole, this is where you wind up in. And you wind up like being an author who no longer cares about whether or not a certain story is true or not. And like that's dangerous territory to be. You start to think, oh, if I jump off the balcony, I really can fly. So it's like, okay, I'm glad I went here, but like the things that I talk about in Fourth Wall Phantoms, I cannot carry with me through further books that I write, because like it's too many variables to throw into the soup.
For sure. Yeah, something that Hunter and I always go back and forth about is the artist's responsibility to manifest things into the world that will ideally make it a better place, or make it a more entertaining place, or something positive. And this sort of adds a different layer to that. Like, well, that's a whole different level of responsibility. If you're you're birthing something, you want it to be a good thing that you're birthing in it.
Well, one of the most confronting things for me, like, even though I am a practicing Christian, like, I have for decades rolled my eyes at the evangelicals when they say they won't watch a horror film because they don't want to put those ideas in their head. I'm like, come on, it's just a movie. But now I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Is that, is there something more to that? And I kind of am inclined to think that there might be. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't watch horror films, but I do think that it suggests that you should probably ensure that your own house is in order. Right?
Yeah.
Like you can have McDonald's, but manage your gut biome too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
So it's like it's one of those things where it's like where you can go investigate the malicious haunting, but come back and as I did the other night after doing an investigation, come back, read the Bible, take a shower, listen to Methodist hymns on the way home.
Yeah.
Like, just personal mental spiritual hygiene.
Yeah, for
when
sure.
engaging with some of these ideas, and
Absolutely.
like there's some media out there that you read or watch, and you're like, this feels like it has something attached to it. It really does.
Oh my God, yes, yeah. I mean, I hear it from somebody that I work with all the time who's talking about these streamers that will go out and just cause, like while they're streaming, cause chaos on the streets, whether that be assaulting somebody or just fucking with them in some way. And it's like, that's horrible. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any karma quick enough to
Yeah.
deal with these
Yeah.
people. Unfortunately, it's going to be probably a lot. There's going to be some bodies along the path, hopefully not literally,
Yeah.
before they get their comeuppance. But yeah, it's like there's a lot of bad shit being manifested out there, and I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly.
And your books are
hopefully they're good shit.
Oh my God, yeah.
They're not bad shit.
No, they're excellent shit.
Yeah.
I wouldn't use the word shit, actually. Yeah, so I mean, did that sort of put you in the state of mind of sort of like a hall of mirrors writing a book about?
100%. Yeah, I mean, yeah. And that's sort of there is sort of a hall of mirror aspect to it anyway, with me having my own voice in it, because
Yeah.
anybody who's read my other stuff, I just avoid the word, the pronoun I, like it's never not good. I think it's in the afterword of Ecology of Souls, and that's about it. Might be once or twice in some of my other stuff. And sometimes there's no way around it, but I've always avoided the I thing. And then but at the same time, I've also been whining about not having enough paranormal experiences.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wait, if I really buy into this idea of metalepsis and looking at it and looking back, I'm taking myself out of this stuff.
Yeah.
In the way that I engage with it most profoundly. So like the book is kind of like a little magical working in that respect too.
Yeah. I like it.
But also thematically on point with breaking that fourth wall in a book about the fourth walls. It just all seemed to make a lot of sense. And yeah, there's sort of like there's sort of a loopy fractal logic that is in all this stuff that you see. I think it becomes really highlighted in these fictional incursions. A good example of that is the name Talbot. So
Don't know.
the original, the 40, is it 1940 or 39 Wolfman?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
Talbot is the surname. But Michael Talbot, the author of the Holographic Universe, had a vision of turning into a werewolf while writing a book about werewolves.
Wow.
In Talbot County, Georgia, there is a legend about a girl who suffered lycanthropy and had to be sent overseas because she was killing all these livestock. And then there is another author who has this like 15-book zombie apocalypse series, something like that. And his protagonist is named I think it's Larry Talbot. And I wrote him, I'm like, you're aware that's the name of the character in the Wolfman, right? It's like, no, but it's like a werewolf hunter named by the name of Talbot. So it's like, what is that like? What is that? What's the other one? I think it was and forgive me because I don't have the book open in front of me, but so if I get this wrong, but there's two sightings of different creatures. The witness in both counts the same year was named Charles Wetzel. One of them cited basically the creatures from the Black Lagoon, which has its own sort of fictional incursions attached to it. But the other Charles Wetzel saw a kangaroo in Nebraska. And then, this is a bit more tenuous, but years later you have the chupacabras, and both of those things, you mix them together, kind of gives you the chupacabras. The as Lauren Coleman said, is that like he referred to the chupacabras as sort of like a merbeing and like a sort of swampy merbeing, but in a lot of accounts it hops away like a kangaroo.
Interesting.
And the El Chupacabras is also a being that, you know, from one skeptical standpoint, is solely the product of people watching Species, that film, that sci-fi film.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But from a fourth wall phantom standpoint, it's like a full-on fictional incursion. It's like it's an entity that began as a fictional incursion. You know? So, and I don't know what to make of any of this because I can't really draw a through line between those sightings of the Wetzels and Puerto Rico and the Loch Ness monster and the kangaroo. But it does have this sort of like internal loopy, goofy, fractal sort of logic to it.
Yeah.
So that's the real hall of mirrors that you kind of find yourself in a couple of junctures in the book.
Yeah, and there's the sightings of people who see smaller versions of bigger creatures, like who see like tiny T-Rexes and dinosaurs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, some could say that's not fictional, that's something like that actually existed, but it's not coming from any direct experience with those animals.
See, I would argue that this is an interesting case study because I would argue that like almost every sighting of a dinosaur has got to be something like a fictional incursion.
Yeah.
Because what we are seeing is still kind of this like 1970s, 1980s version of dinosaurs without feathers when we see sauropods.
Yes.
And so if these really are dinosaur ghosts, which is the weirder version, or really are cryptids, like you should expect them to see feathers because that would be quite compelling, right? It's like, oh, it looked like a T-Rex, but it was covered in feathers. And then years later we found out they had feathers. That would be really compelling. But no, people see the Jurassic Park version of the T-Rex.
And tiny.
And tiny too. Yeah. There's, I don't. Well, I mean, you know, there are those ideas that the human soul was tiny.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, if you sort of adopt a more animist perspective and everything is ensouled, then maybe everything's soul is tiny.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I didn't even think of that aspect of it. Do you suspect, rather, that experiencer accounts can exert influence over future accounts in a literal way?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, Whitley Strieber, right? I mean,
Sure.
There's so many things that came out, so many things that were sort of novel at the time of communion that sort of have become memes of their own, and you've seen in subsequent versions. I mean, like the whole anal probe trope is communion. You know,
the cover. So many people cite the cover.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Although it's kind of funny to me that people cite that as like the origin of the Greys, and like, well, Close Encounters was what, 10 years before, right?
Sure.
But yeah, I think that absolutely that's the case. I mean, you know, and I think that again, in a really weird sort of way, it doesn't mean that like, I think Dogman's a good example of this too, right? I don't know what to do with Dogman.
Yeah.
I mentioned Dogman a little bit in the book, but like, it doesn't mean that somebody's sitting around listening to Dogman radio 24/7.
Yeah.
To have this thing influence them, right? Because it becomes, I don't know, we always use technological analogies and comparisons, but like it's been uploaded to the cloud, right?
Yes.
And then we just access that, and now it's on our hard drive.
Yeah.
And we see a Dogman on a camping trip, even though we've had no interest in this stuff. You know, because it's part of that collective unconscious. So yeah, I think absolutely that's the case.
Yeah. Or like, especially when you listen to a show, which I was just doing on the way over here, I go through periods where I listen to big clusters of Sasquatch Chronicles episodes.
Yep.
So I wonder how much those things color maybe future experiences, or because there's a lot of recurring overlaps in those things, you know, that from people who supposedly had no communication with one another.
Well, you know, what's so interesting about, isn't it funny? Because if you're an avid listener of Sasquatch Chronicles, you probably noticed this. Like, people have talked about different classes of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny that all the people on the West Coast get the giant hippie forest giants, peaceful forest giants, and all the good old boys in the South with their guns who want to shoot everything get the aggressive, angry ones? Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny?
Any connection?
And again, like, I think there's a lens through which you can view a lot of my output over the years as like me, like, fully acknowledging the skeptical position and saying, okay, how do we make this work?
Yeah.
That's a lot of what the footprint sins is. You know, it's like we should have a body. We should have better evidence. We don't, but I believe people. So we have to introduce the woo.
Yeah.
Similarly, fourth wall phantoms is a lot like that. Like what I just said about the Bigfoot sightings corresponding to the sort of attitudes of the populace, a skeptic would say, well, obviously that means that it's, it's people making up stories, or that it's a cultural expression of some sort.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, no, I want to make these things play together nicely. And so like, for me, it's like, no, it's an expression of that cultural approach to the wilderness and to the outdoors that is sort of being reflected back at them. It's the acknowledgement of this like problematic skeptical strength and saying, what if that was actually a feature, not a bug?
Yeah. And my youngest son was into, I think he still is into cryptids, but he was into them at a point where he would just explore all the many different kinds. And it makes me wonder if some of the less prominent ones, like there's the one that looks like the self-walking pair of pants.
Oh yeah, the caramel crawlers, or the
something
the
like
night
that.
crawlers. Or,
Yeah. I think that's night crawlers. Like, did that come from either some fake video on the internet or some circulating story?
I mean, I'm not sure that's not the ghost of a Muppet. I mean, look at the video. Like, I'm pretty sure, wasn't there a Muppet that was shaped just like a pair of pants that would just sort of, or there have been some things like that. Like,
the Dr. Seuss book.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know what to make of that either.
Yeah.
But then, like, at the same time, isn't it funny how a video like that comes out? And I'm not saying that's a widespread cryptid, but you can find other stories of things like that now. I think that's really interesting.
And then you have, of course, you mentioned it, Slender Man.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
That's a very tangible version of something like that.
Yeah. Slenderman's Slenderman is a good example of it. James Slenderman, attorney at law. Slenderman's a good example of that. And like, so the question, but again, this sounds so like fucking insane. But like, this does push you into like being able to make sense of people having Santa Claus sightings, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's a powerful archetype.
Absolutely.
And like, Santa Claus does exist. Like, I slip into Santa Claus every December 24th now that I'm a dad. Like, for a moment, I am like, I feel it. Like, I slip into this Santa Claus like archetype suit, right?
Yeah.
So like, Santa Claus does exist, but how real and exteriorized and sensory does that become is the question that I think maybe we should reevaluate.
And there's lots of different versions of Santa Claus. So which one is the most prominent one? The Coca-Cola Santa Claus?
It's funny. It's funny, Chris. Like, every now and then, sorry if everybody's listening, I'm scratching my neck and this microphone attached to me. It's funny. Sometimes I'll read fiction and I'll be like, oh, this is probably the closest that we're going to get to the answer to these things. And, not a commentary on his character, because God knows some of the stuff that I've read is horrible. But Neil Gaiman's American Gods might be really close to what we're seeing. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that. But
I didn't read it, but I saw a part of the first season.
So the gist for anybody who hasn't is that, these things are kind of generated by us, and they're even more importantly sustained by us. And we, just as we have old gods, we sort of, much like egregores, create and sustain new gods, gods of, silica and television and media. And I'm like, and you read that and you're like, oh, that feels really, really spot on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it could totally make sense. And then there's the concept of, like, of all places, in the Pixar movie Coco.
So I haven't seen Coco, so fill me in on this.
It's actually a really
I'm
good
behind
movie.
on my Pixar.
Yeah. You got kids?
I know. Well, so, here's the thing that's been, it's a quick tangent. Like, the thing, I get actual anxiety over the fact that, like, people have not stopped making more movies. So I'm trying to, like, backfill their knowledge. So seriously, like, this past, like, spring was like Universal monster movies, because they're 6. Right? So like, so I'm starting back. So right now they're on like Batman the Animated Series, and the '90s Ninja Turtles. So like, where I'm trying to like bring them up to speed on everything, because I get so anxious. Like, stop, just pause making movies for a little while so I can catch my kids up on pop culture. So that's a big part of the reason why we haven't caught up on Pixar yet.
Hold.
They're 6.
Okay, so they've got time.
Yeah.
Coco, yes. Coco is about the Day of the Dead. Yes, it takes place in Mexico when they set out photographs of those who had passed, set a plate at the table, all kinds of celebrations involving that. But something that was a recurring theme in the movie that was of a lot of importance is that those spirits that go into the other place, in order to keep them alive in the other place, you have to keep remembering them. So if you stop remembering them, then they will stop existing.
Yeah.
It's like the memory is the thing that keeps them alive. Do you think that there's anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's... So the question raises itself, like, Josh, you just wrote this giant thesis on everything being dead and death and dead people in the afterlife. Like, how is Fourth Wall Phantoms a part of that? I'm not sure that, just as the supernatural space and the artistic space are one and the same, I'm not sure that the imaginal and the afterlife are the same. And so I'm not sure that we don't sort of evanesce into the imaginal after we die.
Yeah.
Because, like, I haven't encountered the ghost of a dead loved one, but they're alive in my head and my heart, you know?
Sure.
So I'm not certain that that's not what a lot of this stuff is. I mean, like, look, I really want ghosts to be dead people, right? And like that's obviously that plays a role somehow, right?
Sure.
But I'm not sure that they aren't these projections of the way that we remembered them. There are some allusions to this here and there, but also in Fourth Wall Phantoms, where it's like you'll see a ghost with an anachronism, or a ghost engaging in a behavior that they didn't while they were in life. So like a good example of that is George Vanderbilt is sometimes seen allegedly at the Biltmore Estate in North Carolina smoking a cigar, and he didn't smoke. But that's just something that we expect from a gentleman of that era, right? Or from a robber baron of that era. So in that sense, like, how much of these ghosts are the dead and how much of them are what we expect them to be and we want them to be? In which case, like, yeah, they are sustained by our memory. They are nothing but our memory.
Yeah.
Another sort of shocking idea that I don't really like, but sort of bears repeating, is that, like, the concept of projecting in a relationship is like, you are sort of completing aspects of yourself in the other person. Like, what if when someone dies, what happens to that projection? What happens to that bridge between you and that person? Is that what we see as ghost residue, And can that outlive both people involved, that projected relationship? I don't know. I don't like that idea.
Yeah.
It's not very comforting. But, again, it's this idea that we're playing a role in the sustaining of these things.
Or perhaps that person still exists in a variety of different avenues that could happen when we pass over into the afterlife, but the mode of bringing their image back or their presence back relies on our memories and our attachments to them.
Yes.
Yeah. Like we pull a bit into here.
Yeah, it's like we're not fabricating these people whole cloth. We're buying them tickets. Something like that.
Or translating them or something.
Yeah. We are the medium in which these things are allowed to manifest. So it's not it's the receiver. It's sort of a receiver idea.
But it's something only somebody who is connected to that person can do, because we have that connection to them. So
right. So the ghost is the news broadcast, and we are the television, and the memories are the radio signal or the television signal back in the old days, right?
Yeah. So you couldn't bring my dead friend Motley into existence because you don't know who you know what he looks
Right.
like. You don't have any connection with him. But I could. But I wonder if there's any situation where that could.
Yeah, the only thing that sort of throws a wrench in that is people who like move into a house and they see something involved. Of course, that could involve their attachment to the property,
Yeah.
But there are some examples in some of my favorite cases of things that sort of seem to be verified because people didn't have the knowledge of that aspect of someone, or like, oh, she always played with her hair, and oh, Sally always played with her hair too, or something like that. But again, if we're engaging in sort of this, sorry everybody, this is a sort of jamming and thinking out loud here. But if there is this soup of everywhere, every when, then that also makes sense why we would be able to tap into that too.
Sure, like a grid.
Yeah.
Like some people who get into a car accident and come to knowing a language that they didn't know before. Yeah, having memory.
And I think I actually talk about that a little bit towards the end of the
cool.
book. Yeah, and I think it's because you go to that space. There's a couple of examples of that. It's the scaffolding of language is not present in that sort of near-death space. So you come back and you get you get the wires all crossed. Because you have, because all language is it's a Timu version of telepathy, right? It's like it's a Timu version of it's what happens when you buy telepathy from Timu, right?
That's funny.
Yeah,
it takes 2 months to get.
Well, yeah, not Waymo. Waymo's the cars, but yeah. I think it might have been Timu. I went on there and I was looking at like tents because I'm going Bigfooting later this year.
Oh, cool.
And I saw one that was super cheap. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And I clicked on it and they were selling a picture of a tent.
What?
Yeah, they did that a lot. They have a picture of the thing, and you're like, wow, it's this awesome like 9-person tent for like $30, and you click on it. Sometimes you have to buy the thing to find out, but you click on it because I've seen people who have bought it and gotten this. But sometimes you just click on it, and the slideshow is picture of the tent framed on the wall. So you send them the $30, and you get a literal like poster of a tent.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So telepathy is like the dodgy third-party website. Sorry, language is the dodgy third-party website version of telepathy.
But I hear when I hear accounts of telepathy, that happens a lot during any random Sasquatch Chronicles episode. But the Mind Speak, they allude to there not being necessarily tangible words, but like an impression.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's that was one of the things that Terence McKenna said about how the superiority of the octopus's communication system, because telepathy isn't I'm going to put a sentence in your head. It's like an instantaneous knowing of an emotional state or an idea or a concept. And so the idea is that if octopi use their texture and their color to communicate to each other, which I'm not entirely sure they do, but theoretically if they did, that's an instantaneous, you can't unknow that. Like you are getting this message instantaneously right in your face. I would argue that that's one of the things that smell does, right? Like, if I don't know if you're one of your grandparents or fathers or something, or a loved one, or even an ex-lover or something, wore some sort of specific cologne or perfume. But if I spray that in your face, you have no power in that situation. Me, I am overriding every barrier that you have. You are going to remember them in that moment. You cannot help but remember them in that moment because of the special relationship to scent. So yeah, I mean, I think that there are ways of communicating that are completely stripped of language that can sort of instantaneously convey and project thoughts, ideas, emotions. Yeah.
And lastly, we are approaching on 2 hours. Maybe this might be the most pertinent question of all, but what's with Gumby?
Right? I mean, of all the things I would have expected, and it was, there are a couple of fictional incursions of Gumby, and I'm sure that, I mean, here's the wild thing about this is I'm sure that there's another 20 stories for every one of these that
Oh,
made
at
it into the
least.
book
Yeah.
that just never will get reported because you're not going to tell somebody that you saw Gumby. But
Especially if you don't know who Gumby is.
right. But yeah, Gumby makes a couple of different appearances in this, which is really odd. What I think is really fascinating about Gumby, and again, it's that fractal logic that we talked about, right? And you've already read this, but I'm sharing this for your
Sure.
listeners.
Yeah.
Gumby is based off of the story of the gingerbread man. His
Mhm.
son said that, not only did they sort of use that as a shape for the cookie cutter, but like it's kind of like those inspiration was the gingerbread man. And the gingerbread man is actually a series of folk tales. It's a variation on a series of folk tales called the Arn Thompson Folklore Index calls the runaway pancake motif, which I didn't even know was a thing. But the runaway pancake motif is like this idea of like a baker or someone who's making something that comes to life and gets out of their control and goes
Mhm.
and causes havoc or whatever.
And always something baked? A baked's good?
I think mostly that's why it's the runaway pancake.
Crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's highly specific, but archetypes don't exist, right?
Yeah.
That's a fictional incursion. Like the gingerbread man is a fictional incursion.
Sure. Yeah.
The baker and his wife, want to have a kid, and they end up baking this gingerbread man, and it's a creation of their mind or creation of their labor, creation of their effort that gets out of control and goes and takes on a life of its own.
Pinocchio.
But yeah, Pinocchio. And that's the thing. That's the thing, Chris, is that we're all fictional incursions.
Yeah. When you boil it down, for sure.
Yeah. I'm not saying that any of our parents had control over the way that we manifested, but they had some say so in it. And we are, to whence do we trace our origins, right? Is it to your mother's egg and your father's sperm? Is it to the foods that they ate that gave them the nutrients to produce that? Is it to the sun that sustained those parts of the food chain? Like, I don't know.
It's all everything.
We just happen.
Yeah.
We just happen.
Mhm.
And that's one of my things that fourth wall fandoms made me grapple with, is like, these things just happen. And maybe at the end of the day, that's where we should go with it, is that these things that we just sort of want to resist so much, they just happen. And maybe the reason that they just happen is for you to project meaning onto them, sort of a medium as the message kind of idea.
Sure.
And that's why they do sort of share the sort of scaffolding as these other transformative experiences, is because a lot of that is coming from us and asking us to be more introspective and to sort of follow a lot of these lessons that we have, and to see a hermetic version of reality within as without, as above so below, but also just a more compassionate and thoughtful and holistic view of the world, something that might leave us a little bit more richer than we have found ourselves in the past. Probably centuries, but definitely the past 10 or so years.
Yeah. I think that's a good conceptual place to sort of maybe put a bow on all of this, or this chapter of our continuing conversation. But
well, this has been so much fun, Chris.
Yeah.
To sit down and chat, and I wish that now it's going to be disappointing, because I wish every podcast was this sort of face-to-face
Yeah, I know.
thing, because it's so much more rewarding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wish that we were of a successful, what's the word I'm looking for? I wish we could afford to have people.
We had some angel investors who would have us to be able to fly people out.
Exactly.
Yeah, unfortunately, well, I won't even say that, but it seems like the least interesting people are the ones with the capital.
I know, exactly.
But yeah, what I've noticed too, and you can keep this in or leave it out, but it's really, really interesting, because at one point in the book I talk about the third man effect, and like I've gotten the impression like there's this third party here this entire time, which is, I feel it's one thing to do over the interview like this over the internet and feel that, because you're like, well, people listen to live streams. Sometimes they are live streams that you're having this conversation, but it's another thing to have this conversation in neat space, and to
Yes.
feel like there is this third party that you're also addressing. It's
Yeah.
really strange.
Yeah, I like it.
I do
Yeah.
too. I do too.
Which is, I don't think could be manifest in the same way if we were doing it over our little webcams in our own
I don't think
houses.
so
Yeah.
either. So
Yeah.
thank you,
So
thank you all. If this does get included, thank you all for being our third person here.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we blame you guys. Okay, where can I will admit, as I don't know whether I pressed record when I said this, but I have not gotten all the way through this book. But what I've gotten through is amazing. I expect no less from you, Josh. Where can people get this book? The book is Fourth Wall Phantoms: Reflections on the Paranormal Narrative and Fictions Becoming Fact.
Yes, thank you. I can never remember my subtitles. Yeah, so you can, I hate to say it, you can get the book through Amazon.
Mhm.
If you are overseas outside the US, that is probably the best way, because I've had some really bad luck with packages getting lost in the post overseas. If you are domestic, if you're in the US, I keep a supply of these on hand. And
Cool.
you can just write me, send me an email, either through my website, www.joshuacutchin.com, or directly to my email address, foodtaboo, foodtaboo, @gmail.com. Either of those ways you can reach out to me, and I'll sign it and send it in the mail to you. And the only thing that is different than what you're paying online through other sources is the shipping and handling. So it's usually about, I think, $5 shipping and handling for this.
Cool.
And it's a better deal for me, and it kind of it cuts out it cuts into the profit margins of the big guys.
Exactly.
So yeah,
That's how I got mine. Yes.
yeah,
I
and
recommend it.
I'll always do that for anybody. So
Cool.
those are the ways to get it. And yeah, this is normally where I'd plug events, but I'm at an event. So
this won't come out as soon as this event will happen.
yeah, so yeah, nothing else public until this December. Where
Okay.
the first weekend of December, I'm teaching assistant, workshop assistant for Dr. Kreipel and Kevin Can's
Ooh.
workshop, The Soul is a UFO, at Esalen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah, I'm
It's amazing.
yeah, I don't really know what to do with that, because I would have been happy to have gone to and toured Esalen like on my own time, but to be there in any official capacity is an absolute honor. So
Cool.
yeah, so that's what I'm looking forward to. And then just got some news about some possible engagements for next year that I'm really excited about as well.
Cool. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Are there any more of these in the works?
Oh God. Yeah, I mean, I've got some really nice, fun, tight focused Fortean books that I really want to do. But right now I'm engaged in something that it's a hassle and I hate it, but it's also very rewarding. So Barbara, if you're listening, that's what we're doing right now. But my editor, Barbara Fisher, editor of my last 3 books, has been incredibly patient with me. An absolutely brilliant mind, very well read, incredibly obsessive, which is always a good thing in this field.
Absolutely.
And for the past couple of years, literally, we've been working on a sort of the definitive guide to ghost lights and mystery lights, and putting those in dialogue with some of the ideas from Ecology of Souls. And I'm not kidding. We probably have about 1,000 pages of notes that Barbara has taken, typewritten notes, that we've finally managed to distill, and we are slowly making our. So we have written we're coming up on finishing about 3 chapters, but it's going to be, honestly, it might be 3 books. It might be that big.
Just let it flow.
I mean, there's a reason that you don't see the word light in the index of any paranormal book, is because it's everywhere. It's everything.
Yeah.
So to really try to tackle that, I don't think anybody could have tackled it with the same enthusiasm that Barbara has, and her insights, both personally and from reading every book on mystery lights that exists. I think it's going to be something special. So there's that.
Nice.
And then I return to hopefully some nice, tight, like 80,000 word books on the phenomenon. Yeah.
I'm secretly hoping that they're more than that.
Fair enough.
That's just me. All right, people, I highly suggest you check out this book and write Josh and encourage him to make an audiobook version of it. And Josh, I thank you so much for agreeing to do this. It's great that you were in my neck of the woods relatively, and we were able to pull this off. What other podcast can you high five on the air?
I know, that's great. I'm sorry. This has been an absolute pleasure, Chris.
Yes.
It's been wonderful.
Yes, and hopefully it won't be the last time.
Yes.
All right, my friend.
All right.
Take care. Ta-ta! How do I turn this off?